Hello, everyone. We're slowly letting people in. Just checking with my colleague Priyanka if you were able to get everybody in who was in the waiting room so I can start.
We can go ahead. Yeah.
So
I'll
welcome.
start. I start the recording.
Perfect. Thank you. I will start. Welcome, everyone, to our second edition of the Success Stories, a popular work on climate community event series. We're very excited to have you all today. My name is Monica Leska, and I'm joining from New Orleans in United States. Me and my colleagues from today's event support team, Shua, Priyanka, and Priyatusha, are part of a large volunteer team of the Work on Climate organization, whose mission is to support people to transition to climate jobs or make their current job a climate job. Work on Climate does that by connecting people through a global Slack community with over 20,000 members, offers free climate expert hours, and produces a series of events focused on climate workforce. If you're interested in joining us, please visit our website for more details. And sure, if you don't mind switching to the next slide. And our event today will follow the following format. Each of today's 5 speakers will introduce themselves and discuss their climate career transition, including obstacles they have encountered and strategies they use to overcome them. Additionally, they will also share resources they found useful in their climate path. We will also share those resources in the chat and in the email after the event. Speakers will have 5 minutes for the presentation, and after each speaker, we will select 1 or 2 questions from the audience, and those questions could be posted for us using our Mentimeter integrated function that you will receive QR code throughout the presentation. You will also see on chat the access code or links to access the Mentimeter. And in about 50 minutes, we'll break into 5 rooms, and any attendees could join a speaker they choose, a room with a speaker they choose. We will also add additional room for people who want to network between each other. And those rooms will be open for about 20-25 minutes, depending how the flow of the event goes. And at the end, we'll welcome everybody back in the main room and try to share some insights from those room conversations that you have and share it with everybody. And we will try to wrap up the event in 90 minutes. So I also want to thank you, the speakers who are here today. We have run a campaign call for speakers for this Success Stories Lightning Talks event series this summer, and we have received a great number of people who are willing to share their story and their climate journey with our community. So we really appreciate that they're here today to describe their path and their journey and share it with the rest of the community. And you will also be able, if you know anybody who could be a potential future speaker, please also let them know that we do use call for speaker application for those events here. So that's kind of my introduction, and I would like to move on to the lightning talk and speakers' presentations. So I will start with introducing our first speaker. He's coming or joining us from Washington, D.C., Charles Young. He is working right now at the Department of Energy and is Energy Supply Chain Fellow for the government. So thank you, Charles, for being here. And I welcome you to start your presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And really thanks to the Work on Climate team for having me, being able to share my story. So Like was mentioned, I work at the Department of Energy. I'm an energy supply chain fellow through ORISE, currently based in Washington, D.C. I work a lot on helping secure domestic energy supply chains and some of the clean energy policy in my office, which is the brand new Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains. But before I joined DOE through this fellowship, I was actually working in the tech industry. I was working at a startup, and that was kind of what my traditional academic training had been. So I got a computer science degree, both for my undergrad and my master's. But because, like many of you here, was motivated by the climate, the challenge of climate change, I wanted to hop over and start working full time on climate, and was able to do that at the Department of Energy, which was really fortuitous given how much funding the Department of Energy has received in the past couple years, and the exciting new things that we're doing here to help ramp up manufacturing for clean energy technologies. So with that, if you go to the next slide. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that I faced in transitioning, and also some of the things that kind of worked out well for me. So first, like I mentioned, I have a computer science background, which is obviously a little bit different from what I work on now. And so it was hard to kind of prove the expertise and knowledge that I had built up over time without that credentialing. And a lot of that knowledge I've gained through some of the stuff I'll talk about later, which is reading a lot of things online, reading a lot of reports. The other challenge is really thinking about where I wanted to and where I could make a difference. And that's going to look a little bit different for everyone, depending on your skill set and your backgrounds and what you're interested in. But it took me a fair amount of time in thinking and exploring different options for how I wanted to work on climate. And so that also took a little bit of time, but was, I think, a very good kind of discovery process for myself. And the last challenge is, as you can imagine, navigating federal government hiring can be difficult and a little bit opaque at times. And so really addressing that and figuring out, kind of how to break into the ecosystem was another challenge. But some of the things that were helpful for me is first to develop a deep knowledge base about what I wanted to work on by reading a lot of different newsletters, joining climate communities, and really reading those long form reports that different expert groups put out, like the national labs, different nonprofits and foundations, and that's a really good way to upskill very quickly. And that's something that I spent doing while I was at my full-time job, is just reading these things on the side and talking to different people in these communities. To the second point about kind of identifying where you want to make a difference, I think looking at what your skills are, how you want to work, and then most specifically what is underrated or neglected as a kind of problem space. So for me, I kind of had a good sense of where my technical skills was and kind of what type of work I wanted to do. And I spent a lot of time thinking about what are the neglected areas of climate that other people are not focusing on as much, because I figured if I go somewhere where everyone else wants to go, well, how much value add am I really bringing? There are a lot of, very talented and smart people out here. And so where can I go where there isn't as much attention, where the work is not as glamorous, but just as important? And then finally, reach out to people. I think people always love to talk about what they do, and I felt very fortunate to be in all these online climate communities when I, as a relative outsider, was able to talk with so many people who now, a year or two later, are doing really awesome and amazing things in the climate space. But I'll just add that, reach out with thoughtful messages. Don't just reach out just to say hi. Have not necessarily even a clear ask, but just show that you've done your homework on what they work on, the space that they're in, and what are some of the interesting questions in that space that they might want to talk about. So those are some of the challenges I faced and some of the approaches that I think were helpful for me. Next slide, please. Okay, finally, some resources. So the first thing is, the industry newsletters that I talked about are a really helpful way to kind of keep track of what's happening in certain industries. So PV Magazine is one, Utility Dive, Energy Storage Dive are another. These are the kind of like niche industry newsletters that aren't the, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journals of the world, but they have a lot more dense and information-rich newsletters. Then other thing is, using social media, I think has been very helpful. There's a lot of very wonky and smart people online who like to post their wonky and smart takes. So, hashtag Energy Twitter, hashtag Energy Sky, or some of these other platforms that are developing in addition to newsletters are another great resource. And then finally, the national labs, which are run by the Department of Energy, put out a lot of great resources. So the National Renewable Energy Lab is one. There are many other great great energy labs like Berkeley Lab as well, which I worked at for a brief amount of time. And these reports are very long. They're 100 pages, but they are some of the most in-depth resources that you can find on any topic area. So if there's one thing that you want to learn more about, you can probably find a report somewhere on a DOE or National Lab website. And if you read the whole thing, you'll be pretty close to the frontier of kind of what most folks know. And then finally, Climate Tech List is a website that a friend of mine actually made to help folks look for climate tech jobs, and it scrapes a lot of different websites. So would recommend that as a resource. And always, of course, you can feel free to reach out to me with any further questions about federal government hiring or any of these other things. You can find my LinkedIn, I think was also dropped in the chat. But with that, I think that's kind of the story that I wanted to share about myself. I'll just start back where I was at the beginning, which is, being at the DOE has been a really great experience. I cannot recommend it enough. It's a very impactful place given the position that we're in and the unique fundings that we have. And so if folks have any questions about that, always happy to convince you to come join the Department of Energy.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you so much for this. And one of the questions that the audience have or we have is for you, like how I know that there is definitely a certain barrier around entering government jobs, and if you can kind of describe us the process or like encourage people to not be afraid of that complex system of the federal government and like how to navigate that, if you don't mind elaborating a little bit on that.
Yeah, so I can speak more so to the Department of Energy. So a couple things. First, we have a clean energy core. It is kind of a portal that you drop your resume in, but it never hurts to drop your resume in there, right? We also have USA Jobs, which is kind of another big portal, but it's, again, always worth putting a resume out there for the different applications. You can filter through, look for Department of Energy jobs, kind of look for what's roughly your right skill set. That's another place. I'll also add that a lot of the DOE offices have their own career pages. So I know my office, the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, we have our own career page where you can see the roles that our office specifically is hiring for. Those are kind of some of the increasingly narrower places you can look. But if you want to be even more specific, it never hurts to reach out to folks on LinkedIn. That's something that I was doing actually when I was looking to join the DOE. Is a lot of people were hiring and were posting on LinkedIn about, oh, my office is hiring for so and so, and I would just DM them and be like, I'm interested in learning more about your office and the roles that you're hiring for, and they would have a lot of useful conversations and some insight into kind of what they were looking for. And it's very helpful even now because now many of those people are my coworkers and I work with them, and so that's maybe kind of the best way is reaching out on LinkedIn. I'll also say, people will post about job opportunities, not just on LinkedIn, but also in these climate communities. So I know Work on Climate, My Climate Journey, all these different climate platforms. I know folks, not necessarily my office, but in other offices will post about job opportunities there. And so that's another great reason why to join some of these climate communities. The last thing I'll flag, and perhaps this is too obvious to be even stated, but we do only hire US citizens. And so that's probably the main constraint here, perhaps I might imagine, but do want to disclose that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And another question, if you could briefly kind of talk a little bit about like the trends within the energy sector that people should be looking out for when they're thinking about upskilling or trying to transition. Are there any like specific niches within the energy sector that people should be, looking for, watching, or to develop their skills if they're trying to transition into that field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll say it's a deployment game now, I think. And so we talk every day about the labor shortages and the workforce challenges of a lot of different companies. And so I think, especially with, software and automation, we're seeing a return to some of these more important industries, right? More industrial industries, you might say, as opposed to, coding, Python. Those are great. I mean, I used to do that, right? So I don't want to denigrate that work, but at the end of the day, in order to deploy something, you actually put it in the ground. And we're seeing, if you become an electrician today, you will get paid to learn, and then you can become an electrician and you will make six figures for the rest of your life, guaranteed, basically, because electricians are an incredibly short supply. And so actually those kinds of, I guess what we might call blue collar jobs, I think are actually one that people very much underrate and perhaps look down on in certain parts of the world, which I think is unfortunate because those are the exact kind of skills that we need. And because of that kind of mismatch between labor supply and demand, those are exactly the kinds of challenges and where we need more folks. Where I think there's actually, a good way to own your own business and really help make a concrete difference every day. That's something I think about, honestly, when I think about what I'll do after DOE. But that's maybe one thing, which is a lot of the traditional blue collar work that is underemphasized, but I think is sorely needed. I think I'll leave it at that. I don't want to speak too much to any specific industry here.
Thank you so much. That was really great. And thank you for your presentation and sharing your journey. Really appreciate that. So at this moment, we're going to move to our next speaker. But before we do that, I just want to mention that we'll be cutting or pausing chat during the speakers' presentations to allow people to focus on the presentation and to be able to see the Q&A links where you can post your questions. You can also scan the QR code that's at every slide for that specific speaker, use the code that we put on chat or use the link to access and post your questions. So just reminder there. But let's move on to our next speaker, who is Jennifer Owens. She's joining us from New York City, where she works as a director of marketing at Flowcarbon. So welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm very glad to tell my story. So to the next slide. As director of marketing, so Flowcarbon is in the intersections of all the different lines of the voluntary carbon markets. So we're dealing with corporate clients, we're dealing with institutional investors, the quasi-regulatory bodies that are so important to the market right now. And so in the middle of all that, here we are with our business. And so my team is creating content. My background is I started out as a newspaper reporter and was a magazine editor and then digital content, and that has moved into social media and video and the like. But big part of what we do now is webinars and podcasting, and then also in-person events. So that's my quote there. Life is accumulative. I keep getting new skills and I have to bring them to every job I have. So next slide. Can we have the next slide, please? Oh, thank you. So the barriers that I have found getting in from climate, because my career started in general news and lifestyle reporting and the like, is identifying the opportunities that come with your accumulated skills. So I find that especially in the world of content, you do accumulate skills and skills and skills, and it can be hard to think about you could do almost anything. And so, and thinking that way will get you nowhere. So you have to start thinking about the opportunities that you're interested in. What skills would you like to be using more of? You'll bring the rest with you, but what is it that you actually want to do? And so you're going to hear a lot about it, is building a network of climate connections. So many of your peers that you've worked with or went to school with or the like are now moving into climate as well. Start making those connections. Those are your warm connections, and start making your network come alive by reaching out to those folks. It can be hard at first and it can seem like a barrier, but I'm gonna say that it's there for you if you're prepared for it. And then previously, before I was here at Flowcarbon, I was at Meta, and I found moving from small and mid-sized companies to a massive global entity with corporate hiring traditions and structures and processes mixed with the specifics of the sustainability team structures. That was a bit of a barrier to get over. So how I did that, I put my reporting skills to work. I went on a listening tour. I now do that in every job that I have. I make a date with all the internal folks and to get to know what they do, where their pain points are. Everyone has a story. Everyone has advice to share. Listen to it, write it down. I keep a running doc, and then I referred back to it, because like 3 months from now, you'll think, didn't someone tell me? And then you have it for you. Now, in talking about making your network come alive, my big suggestion here is have an ask. Are you job searching? Are you trying to learn about how to put your contacts to work for you and your skills to work? Kind of know what you're asking for, because people inevitably want to help you and they will say to you, how can I help? And so tell them how they can help, because people's minds will go immediately to how to put it together for you. I subscribe to every newsletter and, just dive into all the content that's out there, and then start getting rid of the ones that aren't helpful, because you'll get snowed in. There's so many newsletters out there and news sources. And then there's also a lot of climate groups. Again, try them all out and then stick with the ones that align with where you're going, where your interests are and the like. I say try it all, but then edit yourself. That's the editor in me. And these are my resources. So in job searching, and I come up through publishing, so I'm always job searching. The keyword filters on LinkedIn are your friend. You know, find the connections 1, 2, and 3 are very helpful. That certainly the words that you're using to filter for the types of jobs. See what jobs look interesting to you, and then use that as a lead on where to find other jobs that mirror that. I really like the overlay, the API that is the Teal job tracker tool. It kind of goes into LinkedIn and helps you track what you're applying for. It has a bit of AI in it to help you with like writing letters and the like. Charles was saying the same thing, but the jobs channels in a lot of the climate groups, like Work on Climate, are great. Women in Climate has a great job group. Just take a stroll. And then your college alumni group, your college alumni association wants you to do well because they want you to represent the school. They want you to donate back. So they're there to help you find new jobs and make connections. They are a really great resource that you should feel free to tap. And that's my scoop.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this. And I also have kind of similar question around the trends in marketing, which you kind of tapped on a little bit at the beginning, mentioning about the podcasting and the content creation and like how the message around climate is shared and how people receive it. But do you find any obstacles or are people, I guess my question is more like, what are the best tools to share the climate stories with people, and the ones that you are doing are the tools of the future meaning short-term future, because obviously it changes so quickly, but is this something should people be tuning into it or when they're thinking about how do they fit in within the marketing department in climate institutions, like what should they be focused on when thinking about transition into that field?
My watchword for 2024 here at Flowcarbon, I've been talking to my team about this, is objective. And what is your objective? And it relates out to who is your audience? Who are you trying to reach? Because these audiences live in different areas. So at Meta, one of the things we were doing, you'll be surprised to hear, Instagram, very important to Meta and content creators. The climate conversation among climate content creators lives on Instagram. And so Instagram was very important to how we do things strategically. Flowcarbon, we are much more, if you know the term B2B, we are talking with corporate buyers who are looking at carbon credits. They're not as much on Instagram. So we're going to look at other areas. LinkedIn is important to us. YouTube is very important to us. Newsletters are important to everyone. If you write a real newsletter that actually serves the audience you want to reach with things that they want to read, it's a wonderful workhorse. But those are all different tools. Your first job is to figure out what's the objective, what are you trying to achieve, and who are you trying to achieve it with? And then everything else can come online.
Thank you so much. And I have another question from our attendees. Considering your background in tech, how did you frame your story when you pitched your journey to climate companies?
Well, I pitched it as I'll back up. The world of the carbon markets is very, very intricate. It's the most vertical industry, and yet it spreads out far and wide. It's the weirdest thing. Usually, like when I ran women's magazines, it's very horizontal. You're kind of covering a little bit of everything of a certain group of women's lives. In this, it's very vertical in that it's the carbon markets, but its impact through finance and the like is very broad. So the way I pitched myself was a little jack of all trades, master of none, but I will become a master on the carbon market. So I know a lot about how, because of the way the broad work that Meta does in sustainability touches regenerative agriculture, renewable energy, it's water stewardship, it's kind of everything, and carbon credits are part of it. So kind of saying I am aware, I also understand how it all works together. And then I also have the inside knowledge of working for a major company that is working with carbon credits. So just kind of pulling forward the pieces that they would be interested in.
Thank you so much. That was really great. So thank you for your presentation. We got more questions, but I think we're at a time and we'll let those questions show up in the breakout room with you. So thank you for sharing your story. And right now I'll bring to the spotlight our third speaker today. Yejide Olutosin is joining us from Atlanta, Georgia, where she is a director of business climate finance at Impact Experience. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. So again, my name is Yejide Olutosin, and I have the pleasure of leading the Business Climate Finance Initiative at a social impact organization headquartered in California called Impact Experience. And I am able to lead a high impact team where we work with corporations and organizations on how they can align their financial activity. So think their banking relationships, their investing with their climate and racial equity goals. I transitioned into this role earlier this year after almost a decade between financial services and energy development throughout Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And so it was really great to be able to kind of pull my previous experiences forward into a role where I could really be an advocate towards environmental justice. Next slide, please. So this slide really kind of highlights a few of the barriers that I faced transitioning into this role, and I provided some ideas or potential solutions for mitigating some of those barriers. And so if we start at the top, talking about just the lack of existing diversity within sustainability and climate leadership roles, depending on where everyone is on this call within their career journey, you may be looking to pivot into a leadership role. And so I think one thing that was really helpful for me was being able to clearly connect my previous experience, over a decade of experience working in perhaps related industries, but not directly in sustainability, and showcasing exactly how my background makes me uniquely positioned to lead these projects. Secondly, navigating new professional circles. I think everyone on the call, has noted having to transition, whether it's from a related industry or completely unrelated. I think being able to shift into sustainability requires forging connections within the ecosystem. And I'll provide some resources on the next slide on that I found particularly useful to kind of help that transition be a bit smoother. And then again, proving competence and credibility during the hiring and recruiting process. Folks have already talked about ways that you can leverage LinkedIn and some of the other resources, but once you get that conversation, you really have to be able to really show what your value add is to whatever corporation or organization that you're looking to join. They need to see that your experiences will be additive to whatever their organizational mission and goals are. And so I think that's when being able to leverage online platforms, industry publications, educational resources is really helpful, because you'll be able to not only connect your previous experiences to the organizational mission, but you'll also show how you are timely and relevant, which I think is very, very important in this day and age. We have a lot of information. Any one of us can get on Google and look up these topics, but how are you staying kind of ahead of the curve and understanding the trends within your particular sector is, I think, what separates you from perhaps being an individual contributor to being a strategic leader. And then finally, the transition to sustainability leadership really required developing additional skills that weren't readily available in previous roles. And so I think for that's when you seek out mentorship by joining affinity groups that focus on promoting diversity within sustainability. So that way you have that safe space to ask those questions as you embark on this, on the journey forward. And with that, we can move to the next slide. And so here on the slide, I've provided a few kind of snapshots of resources that were really, really helpful for me, again, transitioning into sustainability or into a sustainability leadership role. If we start from the left of the slide, Green 2.0 is fantastic. It's a great place for if you're looking for an affinity group. They've actually just launched a speaker bureau, which very similarly to Women in Climate. They had a fantastic event during Climate Week, which allowed me to actually expand some of the work that my team is doing. Green Biz and ESG Today are bookmarked on my computer. Really great way to get just a snapshot of what's going on in the sector. And you can break that out between finance, sustainability, or environmental sciences. And then finally, Green Jobs Board. It was actually started by a colleague of mine that I met at a TED Talk. And she does a really good job of pushing out a lot of really great impact-driven, mission-aligned companies that are looking to fill some seats. And then finally, there's a hyperlink to a conferences guide. So again, when you're thinking about, making that leap, that the network is paramount. And so I find that meeting people in person or meeting people virtually at activities like this is really, really great. And you can already get ahead of the game with your 2024 conference schedule. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for allowing me to share my insight, and feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. And one of the questions that we have here for you is around also skills and skill building. But now that you are in the climate industry and have a climate job, like what do you imagine your path is going to be with your skills building, and what are you looking forward to in the future for your own journey in the climate?
That's a really great question. I would say what I'm looking for now is how can I continue to build my skill set? I think what's really, really exciting about sustainability is you can go in any direction you want, right? I mean, we have folks on the phone for marketing that are doing federal funding, that are looking at sustainability from an impact investing or venture capital perspective. And so I think moving forward, it's just trying to see like, how can I continue to leverage and build upon my skills? Because ultimately, I think if you enjoy being in mission aligned work, you're always looking for what's next.
Thank you. And as far as sustainability and climate, what are kind of the similar and different things between the organization you work before and after?
You said between the organization that I worked in
in the past or not? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, so that's a good question, and I think that'll kind of help with the previous slide around kind of the previous strategies. So my work background really started with energy access. I managed government DOE projects in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia for about 7 years. And so with that, you learn very intimately why energy access is very important when you think about health, when you think about education, when you think about living standards. And so pivoted into kind of use that role to parlay into looking at energy from a regulatory and policy side. And so, because pretty much when you think about energy access, there's two kind of major parties, right? There are the utility companies and all of the organizations that provide the energy in whatever form it's in. But then there's also a regulatory body that provides rules and regulations to ensure that the end user, us, are able to have access to that energy. And so it was really, really fascinating to be able to like bring in the policy side of things and kind of help bridge that gap. And instead of utilities seeing regulators as the enemy, really seeing them as partners to drive these energy access levels up and throughout the emerging markets that I worked in. And then finally, I pivoted into my current role actually out of financial services. And I think with that, I was able to build out my ESG, so environmental, social, and governance understanding. And again, I think that's really where I was able to build my market acumen and really seeing like not only what has been done in the past within the energy industry, both here and abroad, but what is around the corner and how can we capture those market trends?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And let's move on to our next speaker, who is Mahima Moolbharati, who's calling from India, where she works as a project engineer at B Incorporation. And she will take us on her climate journey.
Mahima has dropped from the call and is trying to rejoin. Can we move forward to Douglas for now?
Totally, yeah, thank you. So Douglas Greenwell is joining us from London, and where he's working as a fractional chief revenue officer at Sylvera. Thank you, Douglas, for being here. And please go ahead and tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Great. Hello. Thank you, Monica. Thanks for the introduction. And great to virtually meet you all. Hello from a very wet and slightly chilly and very dark London town. Next slide, please. As Monica said, I'm lucky enough to sort of sit at Sylvera, who, just like Jennifer has described, we operate within the carbon markets, which I have to say I think is a super interesting space within the climate community. As Jennifer touched on, it kind of touches on a whole series of aspects from finance, government, regulatory, sustainability plans, net zero, and of course this whole thing about improving a community. I've been at Sylvera for about 6 months now, and one of the key things which I'll come to in a moment is the nature of the role, being fractional. Prior to that, and just in terms of my journey, I made a decision back in April last year to pivot into climate. I've been lucky enough to operate for about 30 years in a mixture of product, sales, marketing roles, having come out of a scale-up fintech organization. But decided actually it was time to do something a bit more meaningful and something that was impactful rather than just making bankers richer, which is a lot of what I seem to do. If we move on to the next slide. Thank you. I think a lot of these things have already been spoken about in terms of some of the barriers and some of the strategies. So I'm not going to kind of labor the point other than to say, as far as one of the barriers is concerned, I cannot emphasize enough how vast actually the climate market is, which is really encouraging. Actually, it's really encouraging to see the extent of solutions that are out there and some really creative people lending their talents towards solving this particular issue. But within that, I'd also say it is principally startup organizations. Most organizations are in that sort of seed to Series A area. And that needs to be a very careful consideration for a number of you. You need to be very aware of and very conscious of moving into a startup environment if you haven't already done it. It culturally is very, very different from the large organizations. We heard talk of Meta earlier, and some of the kind of policies and procedures they follow. As someone once described to me in a startup environment, it's not like where you can push a button expecting something to happen. When you push a button in a startup environment, not only does nothing happen, when you lift up the button, you realize it's not actually wired to anything. So you've got to get your own screwdriver out and start building it all yourself. And I think that's a really important point, that when I kind of go into some of the strategies, one of the first is really be clear on what is it you have to offer. I would always caution people against saying, if you're going to make a change, don't make two at once. If you're moving from your current industry into climate, do so with the proven skills and experience that you've already got. So if you are a product designer, go and try and do a product designing job. If you're a sales exec, go and do a sales exec job. Far better that you only kind of make that one kind of change with something which is a really solid platform. And to do that, and kind of on the top point, I cannot emphasize enough how much some of the other speakers have described, which is be comfortable at networking. Get out there, talk to people, join the Slack communities, very much engage. And I'm aware that that's not everybody's superpower. I'm aware that not everybody's really comfortable with that. But what I would say is, in my experience, and talking to people in the climate community, they're a really friendly bunch. And everybody's got a tale to tell, and everybody loves telling those particular stories. So try and find ways of overcoming your nervousness and your barriers about networking, and really go out there and learn and be curious. Keep an open mind to what the possibilities are and what you can do with them. And as part of when you consider your own skills, do think about interim or fractional work. Don't necessarily think that I have to get a permanent job. Now, I appreciate that people have different economic circumstances and that interim work might not work for everybody, but it's a really good entry point into certain organizations. And certainly in a kind of this startup ecosystem where they're maybe unsure whether this is the right role at the right time, they maybe want some skill sets for a period of time. It's a good way to break in to a climate organization. And of course, once you've got one or maybe two on your CV, then you've suddenly got a great platform to work from. Last point I would make before we move on is, again, I think to re-emphasize what somebody said before, is be active on social media or within support groups, but always think about being a contributor first before you start asking for things in return. Share information, share knowledge, share interests, share actually how some of your skills can help. One of the first things I did back in last year was I joined an incubator and offered my advice for free to startups. And it gave me great exposure to the different types of people and startups that were going on, and really gave me a good sense of what people were building. If we move on to the last slide, just to give us some thoughts and ideas as to what to do. So again, building on the kind of messages that I've said, networking can't be underestimated. It's really important. And from a UK perspective, as mentioned by others, MCJ I find is an excellent network, not UK exclusive. In fact, they've got some really great meetups over in the US as well, and a super great Slack community. Specific to the UK, the Climate Connection meets once a month. It used to be called the London Climate Connection. I believe they meet up in other cities. I can't recall off the top of my head which ones now. But they, again, they get together and they use a really interesting kind of format of both 3 presentations, but also forced networking. So if you're uncomfortable, there's the place to go. And Juliet, who runs it, does a really great job. From a learning point of view, I cannot emphasize how great I thought the Terra program was. Their flagship program of Learning for Action, which is a sort of 12-week condensed master's program to take you on the whole tour of climate, is really good. And then if you really fancy taking a step into building a business, don't feel you need to come up with the idea. There are communities like Carbon 13 and Entrepreneur First, where they'll take you through the journey and pair you up with people who have good ideas and form the teams. So if that's for you, if you really feel like having a go at a startup, it's not for everybody, then have a look at those sort of communities and have a go at joining their incubator programs. I'll be delighted to connect with anybody. I'm guessing my link has gone into the chat, but there's a QR code to the left-hand side there, if that's easier. Thank you, Monica. Back to you.
Thank you, Douglas. And could you remind us what's the website for the EF log that you have?
Oh gosh, I don't know, but let me kind of put it into the chat in a moment. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I'll put it into chat.
Perfect, thank you. And we have one question, and somebody's asking, there are so many companies coming up and very curious about your approach to assessing which startup to work for. How would you decide, like which startup to choose? If
a great question, and you're right, there are a lot of them. I would take a kind of tiered approach first of all. I mean, first, really decide what interests you. So there are so many disciplines across the climate spectrum. My particular area, I'm interested in SaaS software, data, and financial services. So I very much kind of centered my thinking and my understanding around those particular areas. So look to what interests you, and to a certain degree, what experience can you bring, and filter first off that way. Second, then, when you look at a startups, have a look, particularly if you're going for a permanent job, at what traction have they got. And what I mean by that is, have they actually got a product? Is it generating some revenue? What typically sort of customers have they got? What funding have they got behind them? Do you really see that this is not just solving one problem, but solving multiple problems, and has got kind of a scaling path and a future to that? Nobody really wants to join a startup that's really great and is really great at solving a problem, but can only acquire 3 customers and then that's it, job done. So I really feel that this has got some great momentum and some great backing, and you can see a good 3 to 5 year journey for that particular startup.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's great. Do you mind also sharing, like, what are you thinking about your future and your upskilling? Like, how do you see your journey of developing? Maybe we know the climate sector is changing so quickly and adapting. So, like, what are you looking forward to learn in next 5 years, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky enough. I've already had a really great career in lots of other areas. So my focus is less about skill development and more about kind of knowledge and focus. I'm a firm believer that you need to continue to learning and you know, to build on to re-emphasize Jennifer's point. I mean, the carbon markets they look as if they're fairly straightforward. It's carbon credits, isn't it? Isn't it just a ton of CO2? But they are super complex and they've got lots of subtlety to it. So a lot of what I'm looking for is just that, is working with great people in an environment I know initially little about and can be really interesting to learn more about. But meanwhile, kind of building on stuff that I can do. And so some of the way I think of it is, you know, how can I bring the sum of my 30-year career and bring that to bear into environments and help build those businesses that are trying to solve some super interesting problems.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Douglas, for sharing all of this. I hope it was very helpful to our audience. And I want to check with my colleague, Shua, to see if Mahima is back.
Yeah.
Yes, she's back.
Technical difficulties.
Okay. Perfect. So let's move on to our 5th speaker today. And Mahima is joining us from India, where she's working as project engineer at B Corporation. So I'm sorry for your travel and dropping the call, but I'm glad you're back. So please go ahead and tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. You know, Zoom always crashes when you need it the most. But hi, everybody. My name is Mahima. I'm a project engineer with B Incorporations. I work towards sustainability consulting and certifications and reporting in the corporate world mostly, and I've worked with green infrastructure in the past. By training, I'm a civil engineer, so I started with construction work, and then I moved towards green infrastructure, green buildings, and then now I'm moving a little more towards sustainability reporting and sustainability policy. In the new year, I'm going to be starting a new position with the IFRS Foundation, who are building the international sustainability standards. And all of this has sort of accumulated into me becoming somewhat of a sustainability reporting and a policy person. So I'm happy to share a little bit about my journey, some barriers and some strategies that have worked for me. If you can move to the next slide. Thank you so much. So I think the first barrier when you're trying to enter the climate space is that even though it's a lot of work that's happening, it's a very exciting time to be working in the climate space, but there's a lot of the work happens in silos and in very structured way. So if you want to enter any of these markets and verticals, it's very difficult for you to use your transferable skills. And in order to be identified as an expert, you need to have years of experience or some kind of academic training, or you need to have extensive knowledge. So it's a little difficult for you to enter if you're not from this ecosystem in a way that most others are. And another barrier is that even though there is a lot of information and a lot of knowledge that is available to us, it's not curated, or there's no holistic learning path for someone that wants to transition into sustainability certifications. So you have to do a lot of the work for yourself to see what's right for you, what fits well, what doesn't fit well. And this, it's kind of a difficult space to navigate, especially if you're starting out and you don't know much about how things are done. So that can be a difficult first step for you to take. Another common barrier, I think, not just the sustainability, but overall, is that right now looking for a job to transition is quite difficult. It's a very competitive market right now. You're competing with some excellent people and candidates. And a parallel barrier again is that organizations are expecting a lot more from candidates. I mean, you see job ads where they ask for 10, 12 years of experience in sustainability reporting when the industry itself is not that old, so it's very difficult for you to sort of tick all the boxes. And sometimes it's a lot difficult to convince people about your potential rather than you being like the perfect candidate, so that it can be quite exhausting. And I think that's one of the barriers that I faced personally also. But all's not dull. There are some things that you can do, some strategies that have helped me in the past as well. And I think the first and one of the easier ways to get into certifications and sustainability reporting is to start working towards some kind of professional certification or a credential. So if you're looking at the green buildings industry, you can look at LEED or BREEAM certification, or you can look at GRI reporting, or any of these professional calibers, or something that can add weight to your resume. I think these are very helpful, and they sort of help you stand out from the crowd as someone that's committed to the climate space. And another trick that is another vertical that really works right now is if you're a numbers person, or if you're like a quant inclined person, you can go into sustainability analytics. So you can do a lot of GHG emission reporting, energy modeling, simulations. You can do a lot of calculation analytics side of it, especially if you're looking for some of the bigger consulting firms. They do a lot of these kind of roles. So if you're that kind of person, I think there's a great opportunity for you to start from there. And another way for you to upskill is, I have had the privilege to study sustainability. I did a master in sustainability, but if you want to look at online learning modules, LinkedIn Learning has been so useful for me. So if you want to learn about the industry, or if you want to learn about how things are done in practice, a lot of these e-learning platforms and modules and workshops and networks, these have been very, very helpful. Some of the great ones have been already mentioned in My Climate Journey, Climate Base, Work on Climate. So all of these networks can be really helpful for you to at least understand what's going on, and then you can see where your intervention can come in. And I think one personal advice strategy that has always worked for me is don't be afraid to message people first. Even if you don't have much in common with them, or even if you don't know what you can contribute to them, but it's okay to just ask and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Do you know someone that's doing something similar? And if they can put you in contact with someone else, that can be your first step to your climate journey. And then I think there's more space for everybody to come in. And if you can move to the next slide, maybe I can show some of the resources that have been helpful for me. Thank you so much. So GBCI is one of the biggest sustainability certifications, especially for the built environment. So if that's something that you want to do, they have a lot of educational content and a lot of credentials that you can navigate. And their WRI or IEA or some of the UN platforms have a lot of educational content and a lot of knowledge that you can gain outside of the classroom. And these have been really helpful to at least engage in the space and then start conversations, and then you can identify where you can come in this kind of world. So yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to chat, and you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mahima. And yeah, we have a few questions here, and I'll start with the first one. What do you what do many people get wrong about sustainability or jobs is in sustainability?
Okay. I think one thing that a lot of people seem to assume is that if you want to be a sustainability consulting or if you want to work in this sector, is that you need to know everything about everything, which I think, frankly, is impossible. But if you want to start your journey, it's always easy to pick one vertical. So, for example, if you want to do climate finance reporting, that itself is a big track that you can pick. Or if you want to look at water footprints, or if you want to look at green buildings, you can pick one and you can sort of build your expertise in one thing. So it's not like you have to know everything, but as long as you know that you want to take one step in this particular direction, I think that should be enough to take the leap.
And what do you think is the future of sustainability? Like, where do you think this field is going to go that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think at the moment there is a lot of focus on ESG and sustainability reporting for the corporate world. In some countries, there is a big push to make it mandatory for organizations to um, publish their annual sustainability reports. Right now, it's a lot of voluntary reporting, but I think if you want to get on to the reporting cycle, I think now is the best time because, as I mentioned in the new year, I'm going to be joining an organization where they're publishing the International Sustainability Standards, which which is gaining a lot of traction. So I think that's like an exciting vertical for people to look out for.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing this. I'm sure that has been very useful and beneficial to our audience. So thank you for sharing your journey and your insights. And this closes the section of the event where we were hearing two lightning talks from our speakers and some questions that we were able to post it. But our attendees will have now much more time to interact directly with the speakers in our breakout rooms. We have, I think we have plenty of time to do about 20-25 minutes in each room, and we encourage people to move from one breakout room to the other. The breakout rooms will be named after each speaker. And you can just choose to go to either one of them. As I mentioned at the beginning, there will be one breakout room that will be for anybody who wants to connect with other attendees and introduce themselves and network. It will be called just want to chat. So my colleague Priyanka will set up the 6 rooms for us, and I hope everybody's energized to spend some more time with the speakers and be able to interact with them directly and converse about the topics that they've learned today, or maybe something they want to discuss more in depth. So we will also stay in this room. If anybody has questions to work on about the work on climate or this event or any technical assistance, we will be in this room as well, me and my colleagues. So you're welcome to join, come back to this room or stay here as well. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you have very fruitful conversations. So let's break into the rooms.
Yeah, so I'm opening the breakout rooms. Everybody, as Monica mentioned, feel free to jump from one room to another. And when you come back to share with us what you learned the most, or what one thing that you really liked or took away from the conversation. So I'm opening the breakout rooms for all.
And Douglas and Mahima, if you could also choose the room, join the room that you, with your name on.
I don't believe, unless anyone has any secret inside information. So we are I'm very open to making this anything we want. How can I be helpful? Who's looking for a job right now? Everyone? Yeah. Can we really bond and say how many of us have been laid off at some point? Just say it.
Well, I have.
I've been laid off 4 times. Can anyone beat that record? I hope not. I really hope not. So
In a 25-year career, I probably beat that.
really,
But
you think?
it'd be hard to think back to all of them, and I really don't want to.
Then you win. If you're not even counting anymore. Yeah. Anywho, yeah. So are a lot of you like looking into like the marketing side of the climate world?
I definitely am.
Yeah.
I'm a senior marketer. I am kind of what you do. I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
The stories I tell help companies get bigger faster. And I'm pivoting out of tech and into climate because it'd be fun to work on saving the world as opposed to just taking advantage of it.
Yeah. Well, so my background, if it helps, is this. So I came out, I was going to be a newspaper reporter all the way. Went to school, so nice. I went there twice, got an extra degree in journalism because, that was going to pay back dividends. So I'm very proud of that, but, still. And then, so I did a program where I had to write an essay about my career as a mid-career thing. And I said that my career is running across like one of those chasms with the wood slat bridge as the slats like fall out behind me. So, newspapers to magazines to, I once did an email newsletter on merger and acquisition deals and publishing. Email newsletter. Or no, it wasn't. What am I saying? I fought to get it to be email and they fought me on it. And it was a fax newsletter because I'm that old. So, in any case, I am lucky in a sense. Well, I'm very lucky that, I was pulled into sustainability at Meta. I had done about, 10, 15 years of diversity related work. And I was originally hired at Meta to work on the business equity team and to do a lot of content around business equity issues. Because it's funny, but Meta does actually have clients. And so they are serving businesses. Kind of weird. It's like they don't normally. Anywho, and then I fell in with the sustainability team, and that's actually one of my things about large corporations. I had previously done a lot of work in the workforce realm and talking about how to get women ahead and retention advancement and recruitment of women. And always talking about these major companies, but actually the secret was I'd never really worked at one of these companies. And so to see the inside baseball of one of these companies, especially a tech company, where they claim that it's all flat hierarchy, it's not true. And, there's always people that actually hold the power, but their titles don't say that they hold the power. Because in publishing, who holds the power, the editor-in-chief and the publisher, and then it all comes down that way. So that kind of stuff of trying to figure out where you stand in the morass of a weirdly hierarchical company, that was interesting. That's where that's where as communicators, we win because we know how to ask people questions. We know how to tease people's stories out of them. And then put it to our own, that's the trick now is after so many years of serving audiences, and maybe if we're on the marketing side, serving our overlords, our employers, to serve it in service of yourself, I find is the hardest thing, like, all these skills, and when they're like, when I say what's the objective? Well, the objective is to get a job. What's the audience? The audience are the employers that I'm going to pick. So how would you promote yourself? And so I guess I say I see you all of like, it's the worst is telling your own story.
It's always true. A lot of times why I get hired by companies is because they're having trouble telling their own story.
Yeah.
I ran an agency for a number of years, and we were by far and away our own worst client.
Right.
Took us 3 years to put up our own website. And if we had been a client, we would have fired ourselves after like 6 months.
Jennifer, I was wondering if you could, because I think maybe some of us in this call have sort of done this journalism, worked in newspapers and media, into what you now have is sort of a cool job in marketing, sort of in the climate carbon world. And it's that, I think for me, sort of that transition of going from the writer, the content producer, I've spent quite a bit of time working with in the vendor world with big tech for a while, but still doing some of the newspaper-y type reporting, to adding that marketing title to it. Like how do you cross that bridge? I think that's an interesting sort of conundrum I'm trying to face.
Yeah. And I say
journey.
this, I have a newspaper friend who did a fellowship where she got a MBA. And when I got this job, she goes, interesting title. And so she was, because she's worked hard to get this, to put marketing by her name, which is so funny because many of us who went to journalism school, this was not the title we ever wanted. Now we do. So I would really, just amongst us friends, part of it is knowing the lingo and just putting, so you do content marketing, like, I know this seems very simple, but this is storytelling. You need to put marketing. I had a recruiter call me, which is always a thrill. I'm like, oh, somebody wants me. And they said, well, where is the marketing in your resume? And I realized that I had never, it's all marketing. The minute you're writing for, an audience, a branded audience, you're marketing. So own it, be comfortable with it. You say it first. You say it, you're doing it. And then, the whole world of applicant tracking systems, they're doing SEO searches when you're applying for stuff. Use things like JobScan and compare the job listing with your resume and the like. And if they are missing the word marketing or missing the lingo words that are, because, they change like month to month, put it in, because I know you all have the skills. You do. You're writers, you're communicators. You're just going to communicate for yourself. So, Prince, how can I help you?
Hi, Jennifer. Would you say technical writing also counts as marketing?
Well, yes, because I'm going to say we're all going to sell ourselves and say yes. Because
you would literally write technical writer marketing, or technical writer marketer marketing. How would you phrase it?
Technical marketing? I mean, when you think there's an audience that, I do admit that there is a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to stay on this point. I'm going to die on this hill, and I'm going to say that there are aspects of your work as a technical writer. You're communicating. You're just going to pivot the way you talk about it and talk about the things you've achieved that tie into marketing, which is influencing people to make a change, or were you part of it of driving any sort of efficiency or revenue, whatever it is. If you can tie those marketing KPIs to it, then yeah. And you will say, you will find the pieces of the job that you know how to do and put it under the rubric of marketing.
Thank you.
I'm here to die on the hill, man. Oh, okay.
Jennifer, do you do just in your role? I mean, do you find yourself still actually rolling up your sleeves and writing, doing podcasts, newsletters, or are you outsourcing that work to others? Like on a day-to-day, like how much writing, content production are you actually doing versus steering,
I'm writing
directing?
every day. I often think to myself that I have been a player coach forever. Like I got into editing And the minute I had people reporting to me, like I've never been able to, like I wanted to be one of those, I wanted to be Joanna Coles with her walking desk and just tell people to do things. And I've never been able to do it. And I think it's a skill because I've never gotten rusty at it. It's great. And what Douglas was saying about being in a startup, that's where I am. Flowcarbon was founded in 2021, and he's so right. There is no one, we don't even have a button to push. So yeah, and there's a hesitance, as we all know, content is expensive, it takes time and the like. So there's always a hesitancy to invest more. They brought you on, can't you do it all? And part of my storytelling, once you get in, is to convince them that there's a whole world out there where I can hire people to do more than it is. But in fact, that's something that I fight at every job, because I really do see myself more as an strategic and editing. I will get in there and I will do all the work and the like that needs to be done. But you slow me down if you make me write the entire thought leadership piece. I can do all that kind of thinking. And that's a constant struggle. It's a struggle here too, of like saying penny wise, pound foolish in my mind, but.
Yeah, most employers don't understand how much time it takes to write good content. You can write mediocre content. You can have ChatGPT do it these days and you get it in 4 seconds. Yeah. But like I have a perfect batting average when it comes to detecting ChatGPT writing. Yeah. it's just really obvious to me. It's like, I was at an event the other night and somebody was making a speech, and I turned to the guy next to me, and after like 30 seconds, I said, "This was written by ChatGPT." And at the end, he said, "This was the version written by ChatGPT." And this, I really want to say.
Yeah. Well, I must say, what I've been doing with AI is because I don't have really any editorial partner on this. I have a team, but that's not their skills. Is I'll sometimes run something through just to see if it comes up with some turn of phrase, like it's like the old days of having a team to bounce things off of, so.
It's a much better editor and synthesizer than it is a writer.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Deepa.
Hi, nice to meet you, Jennifer. I have a question about, can you tell us your story on how you got started on your podcast? Because you said you do.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I want to, there's something I want to do, and I'm kind of looking for insights on, because I did do a podcast before, but wasn't able to take it off the ground. And I know that I can do much better here, but I kind of want to hear your story, how you got started, and do you partner with someone, and how did you find that partner?
I do. So I've produced them for other people, and so that's separate. But for myself, I've used it as a calling card twice. And my secret is I find someone 20 times smarter than me to be my partner on it, because I can do the interview and the host and the prep, and I can make the conversation flow, and then I just draw the cool information out of them. And I've done it twice as a calling card when I was looking for work, actually, because that was a way to create content. And so the first time, there's one, it's called The Breadwinners, and when I was in workforce world, I wanted to remind people that I was an expert in workforce research and the like, because I'd run a media company around workforce issues. And so my co-host, she was in charge of workforce development for Harvard. So, basically, if you get her, my favorite was to shock her. And then she would just spew forth with all this good stuff. So it was great to have a partner. I love doing it. And then I went to my playbook so I was part of the Meta layoffs round 3, I think. They don't like to talk that there was actually 4, but but round 3. And so they halved the sustainability team, and one of the people also let go. I was the lead on external content, and Katie was internal content. And so I pitched this idea to her, and she is now at Adobe on their sustainability team. I'm at Flowcarbon, and now we're going to get going on doing a second season of it. But we did it as a way to keep our hand in, have something to post about, and totally done without any, not to make money or any. I mean, it's just there's 8,000 billion podcasts out there. It's never be a big thing, but.
Did you use Libsyn as your platform? Like, what did you use?
I used Megaphone. I have a wonderful, to do a 30-minute podcast was like $70 for editing. I have a wonderful vendor I love. They're out of Columbus, Ohio, called Sound Advice Strategies, Sound Advice. Phyllis and Kelvin. They do wonderful work. It's totally worth it. Again, like not writing all the thought leadership and getting bogged down, like having a partner to do the editing. It was worth like I think it was $70, you know, and then I split it with my co-host and then I did all the socials and we did all the promote, you know, like I just.
Yeah, but the hosting, what hosting?
Hosting is Megaphone and Sound Advice carried that as part of my fee with them.
Okay, Megaphone. All right, thank you.
Caroline.
Hi, thanks for doing this. So I had a question. So one thing, I guess I've been looking for jobs for maybe about 6 months, and all my background is in business to consumer companies, but I've noticed that there's a lot more of B2B companies that seem to either rehiring now or just generally across the climate tech space. I'm curious if you have any advice. I mean, I guess not to make it too relevant to me, but typically I make it past the hiring screen and then they say, oh, we thought you were great, but we're going to go with someone who has more B2B experience.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any way to like get out of this, or is it just kind of inevitable and just you have to hope? I mean, I know I could take a certificate course, but I'm just kind of curious, like, what are your thoughts as someone, you know, with experience throughout your career?
Yeah, I think that may be where the startups may be your friend, because they don't know quite as much, and then they think all the startups think they're super sexy, and so you can pitch that, you know, that, and then bring it in, because we all know the skills are the same. Again, it's the objective,
of course.
And then it's what platforms you're going to use and how you're going to reach it. You know, it's all the same. And I tell you that when I was this is how old I am. I was in they called them trade magazines, and I wanted to get into consumer magazines, and I had the same exact thing. And I ended up making a lateral move to knitting and crocheting and sewing magazines. But that's what got me over the hump. And then I was able to like move up. I basically just keep going. I mean, it's their loss, and, you know, but these stigmas are stupid. It's a highly technical term, but they're stupid and useless. And it's the same. And we all know they're the same skills, but just keep at it, man. Keep at it.
Thanks.
So, Pratyusha.
Thank you for the session. I really like your energy. So my question was, I was going through the Flowcarbon website and I saw that you provide blockchain solutions and stuff. So both climate and blockchain are not fully trusted by users. So how do you approach this in your marketing strategies?
Yeah, that's the crux of the problem that when I first started, that's exactly it. It's that the carbon market is getting faced a lot, and some of it rightfully so, about questions over the forest related, you know, the red methodology credits and the like. So you have that going on. Then you have Sam Bankman-Fried bringing down the whole crypto industry at the same time. You're killing me, people. So when I interviewed here, I did say, listen, there's no silver bullet, you know, there's no, you know, and I don't know that, you know, we have a brother company, a sister company called Flow, which is related to Adam Newman. So there's that added fun too. So so basically my overall strategy at first is just to settle the ship. The ship was rocking all over the place of what we can do, and start showing the power of content and just building a wall, not a wall, but building a structure of good, trusted, authentic content that serves an authentic audience. Like not just like, oh, we got clicks, but an audience that says, oh, we can trust what Flowcarbon is saying. And that takes time. So I started in July. I would say that we've righted the ship, and actually, now I'm at a moment where I want to move us from tactical into strategic thinking. And honestly, being a startup, they have a hard time thinking a year in advance. That's something I've bumped into. And so I'm like, okay, well then the language they need to hear is like Q1 to H1, but it's really, for me, it's just building trusted content. And I also like to say I've never been edited as hard as I have been here, like since I was a cub reporter. Oh my God, the carbon markets are there's so much going on. And always like almost in it. And then we launched as a blockchain company. And so we work in the world of tokenizing carbon credits, but there's a whole lot happening with the registries. I won't, you can get really deep into it. And I have to learn a lot on that score too. My brain gets tired. So I'll just be honest.
Thank you for sharing.
But I'm just glad to be employed too. I mean, it's for reals. It's when I have a day where I'm kind of worn out, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm reminded that like I was at a startup, then Meta, then here. Like that's a lot of, like I'd like to settle in and like build something here as the company builds. So, but Douglas is completely right. There's a lot that goes, that's, can really wear you down because it changes. Everything, changes. And, I come in saying, we did a major event during Climate Week. And I'm like, let's do the major event again for next Climate Week. And it's really difficult to get them to think next September. And it's like, okay, then I need to, get myself in a level that works and is helpful. So, Prince.
Jennifer, I'm on your LinkedIn and I can't see this crocheting.
So
okay. My question is, do you have a podcast episode where you go into some of the meat? So some of the meat you shared today, I would love to have access to all of it. So can I have the link to that podcast episode where you talk about the layoffs and all that good stuff?
No, we didn't do a podcast episode on that because we were looking forward, not about what happened to us, but where we think the industry is going. So the podcast we, Katie and I launched was Engaging ESG on ESG Comms. And so we're positioning ourselves and looking at different issues. That one was the first season was looking at stakeholders. How do you talk to your employees, which is Katie's expertise? How do you talk to shareholders, investors? How do you do consumers and clients? And so in our season 2, we're going to go industry sectors. So we're going to look at travel and the way people are dealing with sustainability and then communicating how they're dealing with it. Like oil and gas, automotive, like some of the more difficult sectors. So no, I did not do a thing on getting laid off because Mika Brzezinski, who we featured on a magazine.
Now, or you want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if we can do gallery view.
I think you guys have to choose that. Like each individual chooses that.
Oh, just remove.
No, I think it's you who's taking the screenshot.
Yeah, I will take the screenshot.
Yeah, so for you just choose for yourself, you choose the view
it's
on the right hand side as the gallery view, and then everybody will appear.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
Everybody will be back in 10 seconds.
Welcome back as everybody is joining back. If you don't mind putting your camera on, as we would like to take a group picture at some point. But I hope everybody had a time to ask a persistent question they had for one of our guests. And we would love to hear from the audience about what they have learned from our speakers today, or maybe some new strategies they are very excited to implement in their own career transition, or if you want to share what you were discussing in the rooms, and speakers are welcome also to share any insight from their rooms as well. But if anybody wants to kind of give us some of their feedback, please unmute now or raise your hand, and you're welcome to speak. We have a few minutes to do that. Go ahead, Brian.
Sure. I learned two things that are very encouraging. One, that the time to convergence between the altruistic argument for being in the climate world and from my background, the financial argument is much closer than it used to be. In other words, things are really bad and getting worse, and people are paying attention to the numbers, which is really nice because that means that I can be both, I hate to say it, but green and green. I wish I hadn't even said that. But anyway, that was extremely helpful and encouraging to understand, because I come from a background where profit really matters. And like for decades, I've been wanting to go to a background like this. And now that transition is becoming much, much easier. I also learned that the areas that I've been in, the analytical side of things, is moving forward kind of at a fast pace, and that there are much easier opportunities for me to transition into something where I can actually add value right out of the box than I had anticipated. So I'm very, very, very excited about that. Now I just have to figure out where, as Douglas said, and focus on that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Remember the thing Douglas said about networking? Part of that is sometimes, saying something. Anybody? Just a thought.
Okay, I'll step in. Usually I love to talk. The OPF fellows will tell you that. But I found the conversation with both Douglas and Jennifer were really great. Douglas talked about the MCJ networking group, and I think I'm really encouraged to join it and see if I can do some more networking, because the barrier for entry for me is just having high school and still built a very good career in the SaaS and CRM world, but that transition is a little harder because the requirement is like you have to have a PhD or a master's. So I think in-person networking is going to be a lot more valuable to make sure that I can part with what I know and my knowledge and my experience versus just putting a resume put forward. And with Jennifer, it was so great to hear her story, how she got started on the podcast. And I've got someone in mind that I might reach out to see if they're interested in starting a podcast. And I'm thinking more just from a simple perspective of educating people, not like very high level, lingo or anything like that. But there's so many people who have no idea what truly climate change is or global warming is, as what does even, carbon footprint mean. And so some of those conversations with a little bit of more energy and comic, like humor and energy as part of it. So I need to think about it a little bit more, but I think I've got some encouragement from Jennifer. So thank you. And thank you, Douglas.
Thank you, Deepa, for sharing that. Do we have anybody else?
Just for me, it was Douglas had in the 7 or 43 seconds we had left when we were talking, some confirming advice about the job hunting strategy that I'm using. So I really appreciated that, Douglas. Your feedback was cut off, but what I heard was great. And I've reached out to you on LinkedIn. It'd be great to connect and continue that conversation.
Awesome. Anybody else?
I want to say Douglas's metaphor about the button at startups will live long with me.
One thing that occurred to me when I heard that I've worked in bunch of startups. That button you push, sometimes it's not connected. Sometimes it's connected to the light that lights up on your desk. Says, oh, you want that? Do it.
Good observation, Brian. I think I'll add that to the story.
All right. We have Dennis. You want to go?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think in Douglas's session, one of the things that was helpful for me, good and reaffirming, is that the journey is not a one size fits all. You know, we had someone in our group who was in product, and his journey to his next role, his fit for his next role, what he needs to do to close that gap looks very differently from mine. And I don't know about anyone else on the call today, but it feels like such a vast sea of information and recommendations on what to do next and where to go next and how to network next. And it just reaffirmed for me that to the degree that you can focus on what your end game is and really keep the path as tight as you can while being flexible is key. Not every class, not every certification course is going to be the right fit for the role you want next. And I think finding the right individuals who can give you that specific guidance is really key. And so it was a great reaffirming point in our breakout group. And that said, if anyone is in or looking to get into the corporate sustainability space and wants to connect in on LinkedIn, I'll drop my link in the message, because it feels like a pretty high bar and a tough journey. And so I'd love company along the way. So thank you for this forum, by the way, for organizing it. It's been a great 90 minutes.
Thank you so much. And I think we are at the close of the event. So as a last two tasks that we have for everybody, if we could take a group photo, and before we do that, if I can ask everybody to kind of raise their hands and clap hands to your next person who is next to you. And sure, we'll take a group picture for us while we do that.
All done. Oh, are we? Okay. Yep, all done.
Thank you so much. That was really great. And we really appreciate you being here, and for our brave speakers who were so forthcoming about talking about their success in the journey that we're all in here, including us at the Work on Climate. We are also trying to transition. So learning while we organize those events is another part for us too. So we will share a survey of the event when you leave the Zoom meeting. You will get moved automatically to a survey. So if you don't mind giving us a minute to fill it out, you will also receive a link in the email tomorrow, probably. And it's also, I think we posted in the chat as well. So would really appreciate if you would give us some feedback on that, how to continue making those events useful for our community. But on that note, thank you everybody who made this event happen, and my colleagues, Shua, Pratusha, and Priyanka for assisting me today. And good luck to everybody on their climate journey. Thank you.
Thank you.